Stand by. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of A Turning Point here on WKYC.com. You can also catch us on the WKYC app and Facebook Live, as well as YouTube. I'm DeNatale. And for a year now, about a year, we have been doing these A Turning Point panel discussions, which pair with A Turning Point that airs monthly during the 7 o'clock Front Row newscast. That'll be coming up later this week. And for this month's episode, we're calling it A Turning Point, Stop the Hate. And let me bring in our host and moderator for tonight, 3 News reporter, the pride of Texas, Marisa Saenz. And Marisa, number one, it's great to work with you. We got a chance to cover the draft a little bit the other night, but tonight, you know, we always talk about a turning point as a chance to have conversations in the community to move the discussion forward about race relations in our country. And I think tonight we're going to get a chance to kind of learn something from this panel back to us here about how race relations in a community can work and is working thanks to some amazing people.
Yeah, I think that's really exciting. Hello to everybody. And so I'm so excited to be here. But I think to that point, Dave, it's interesting because not only are these people who are within the greater Cleveland area, but they're students. And it's students who are mentoring and teaching and educating other students who are younger than them. So that's really exciting. And let's talk about the people who are joining us here today. They're community members and students from Shaker Heights. Most of our panelists today are with the Student Group on Race Relations, also known as SGORR. So let's first say hello to some of the leaders within that organization. We've got Aaron Williams and Zach Leaner. Hello to you guys. They're there on the screen. Also joining us today is Tiara Sargent, who is the SGORR advisor. She's there saying hello to you. And then also with this is a parent who her name is Brooke Briesco. I think I said that right. All right. Who's a parent of a Shaker Heights elementary school. And we're really excited to speak to you and kind of get into that with you just a little bit later. But we certainly are very happy to have everybody here with us tonight. But let's get right into it. Tiara, tell us a little bit more about this program. How did it get started and what's its purpose?
Yeah, thank you for having us. So yeah, SGORR was founded in 1983. So we've been around for a little over 30 years. And we were simply founded to help create and sustain Black and white friendships within our school district. So our founders and some of the high school students who were at Shaker at the time, they noticed that there are a lot of self-segregation going on once you got to middle school and high school. So that's why they created SGORR to help the younger kids understand the importance of diverse friendships and relationships. And so now our organization has grown a lot and we have over 200 members and we have 25 SGORR leaders. Aaron and Zach are one of the SGORR leaders. And we go into all of Shaker's elementary buildings and then the middle school and high school. And we get an opportunity to also partner with community organizations. Earlier this year, we were able to partner with Brooke and the PTO for our MLK campaign. So we really want to promote positive social boundaries and really encourage people to cross social boundaries within our community. And we also encourage hard and difficult conversations. So just last night, Aaron had a great activity where we discussed Black women and mental health. And so we have difficult conversations that open people's eyes, and we do it in each other's homes, which is really important as well, because you're most comfortable in someone's home or your own home. So you can really learn who an individual is.
Okay, yeah, and just as you mentioned, a lot of conversations about race relations seem to be more relevant now than it feels like ever before, at least within our immediate lifetime and what we hear about on the news every day. But a lot of these conversations are not easy conversations to have. So I'd like to shift over to the student leaders now. And I think that was a great kind of segue. Erin, she just talked about, this activity that you had, but I want to ask for you, what kind of thrust you into this position, into joining SGORR? Was it something specific for you?
Well, I think being a younger person, because I've gone to Shaker since I was in kindergarten. So being someone who got to see SGORR leaders come into the room, I always got so excited on SGORR days because I think I started to notice things like when I was younger, but I didn't know how to articulate them or like how to talk to anyone about them. So I just was so excited when they would come because I'd be wanting to talk about this, but I didn't know how, or like I didn't know the words to use. And then I think that finally gave me a chance. And so then when I got to the high school, I was like, I'm joining this club. I really want to talk about these issues. I'm super passionate and I want to help younger kids because I think we often underestimate them. Like, I think they know a lot more than we give them credit. So I was just like, I really want to get to know these people, talk to people, and like share some of the knowledge that I've learned being a Black woman in Shaker. So that's what really inspired me.
Yeah. And just to your point right there, I want to kind of circle back to you real quick. You said that you felt like you didn't know how to have the conversation, whether it was consciously or subconsciously. Did you feel like you maybe weren't having those conversations just with peers, parents, family, anything like that? And looking back on that, is that something that you maybe recognize now, especially with your position?
Well, I think I had them in my own house a little bit more, but that was more like 5th, 6th, 7th grade, like when things started becoming advanced math or something like that. And then like my classes were progressively getting more segregated. And I remember one time in 3rd grade, I asked my second grade teacher, I was like, how come all the kids with blonde hair and blue eyes get on bus 36 or something like that? And then she looked like taken aback because I just brought up this random thing. I think I knew in that moment not to say white because I think that was like when I was starting to learn like that there's like differences and skin color actually matters. But we were having those conversations in my house, but I think parents still are like not trying to give you every single detail about everything because like you don't know and you're younger, trying to shield you a little bit. But yeah, but I think SGORR, especially because we like have vocabulary. So I think that really, really helped because I learned like a stereotype was and like discrimination and stuff like that. So I could understand what was happening.
Okay, yeah, Zach, I see you sitting there shaking your head. I got a question for you. You know, throughout your time in the organization and really your whole life, the state of race relations has constantly changed and it's really doing so quickly, even more so it seems like within the last year or year and a half or so, right? So talk to me a little bit about what has changed for you in terms of conversations that you're having with these younger students or even how you're approaching it since you took on this role.
So I think for me, what it comes down to as the conversations are changing and being able to be more comfortable with those conversations really comes down to self-awareness. Like it's impossible to have this conversation or these conversations and think that even though you're having the good conversations and doing what's happening, that you don't have a ton of room to improve. I'm consistently learning that there are things that I do wrong and there are things that I need to get better at in order to make the people in my group and the people I'm talking to feel a lot more comfortable. And furthermore, the issues we talk about are constantly changing because the discussions are becoming more evolved as well as the problems themselves. And so in order to adapt to those discussions, you need to adapt yourself into being a more prominent force that makes people more comfortable and just allowing yourself to be just approachable, especially as a leader. You can't dominate the conversation and you also can't have your opinion be the law, if that makes any sense.
Okay. Yeah, and I think a lot of that is self-recognition, right? Maybe not realizing whether it's like a subconscious effort, you've got to maybe check yourself. And how are you doing that when you speak with these kids? I don't know if you're speaking with the same kids, you know, on a month-to-month basis or a week to week. How often are you kind of circling back to these kids and maybe are they having conversations with you about where they were and how they handled a new situation, maybe something they learned? Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing with SGORR is we really emphasize speaking from personal experience because that's the way people can learn the best. The minute you start making generalizations and talking about other people, it's really hard to grow because you really don't know anybody else's situation. You only know yours. And so that's one of the biggest things. Before any discussion, we usually say our SGORR safety guidelines. And one of those has to do with using I statements. I go through this. This is something I've experienced. And most of my experience with the kids has come from our middle school because that's what I went through last year. And the discussions are really good because this is like right before they're entering high school, right before stuff gets really, really real. And you know, they're able to recognize these injustices even within their own school system, and they're able to speak from personal experience in order to get to the root of the issues. And so, yeah, just drawing from personal experiences is really the best way to move forward, because you can really understand and then sort of try and have empathy for each other.
Zach, do you have a personal experience? Was there a moment that, you know, when you were young that kind of was like the aha moment? And this is something that I need to focus on, you know, when I get older, when I have a chance to be a leader in SGORR?
So, yeah, I mean, similar to Aaron, like when SGORR would come in like 4th, 6th, 8th grade, that was always a big deal to me. But I don't think it was ever, I think actually when I joined SGORR, not as a leader, but as a member my freshman year, when I joined, I was like, you know, it's definitely something I want to do. And I knew I had wanted to do it for a long time, but I didn't really think I fully knew why. And when I finally started going to these weekly meetings, my leader was just so passionate, and he had such a good grasp of the room, and I got to meet all these people that I never would have met. And through doing that, through being in SGORR, that actually furthered my passion more. And I was like, I need to become a leader. And that's really what happened. I had such a great leader for myself that really pushed me to be more passionate about it. So I'd say that was my aha moment, was actually being in SGORR first.
I'd like to ask that same question to Tiara and to Brooke. Brooke, I've got another question for you later, but for both of y'all, could y'all weigh in? Did y'all have an aha moment?
Yeah, I can go first. I grew up in Shaker, so I also was able to participate in SGORR. And for me, my aha moment was I lived in a community that was prominently Black, the Moreland neighborhood, and I would get bused to Mercer, my elementary school. And so I would notice that in my classrooms, it would be diverse and we would have all these fun on the playground. But then when we go back to our neighborhood, I'm still playing with people who look just like me. So it, like Aaron was talking about earlier, I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't know how to formulate my statements. But once I got into high school and I was experiencing SGORR and these living room discussions, and I learned about tracking, or I learned about redlining, I was able to better conceptualize these moments that I had throughout my Shaker career. And so that is really like these moments that I had throughout my career are what empowered me to come back to the school district. I love Shaker. If you ask any of my close family and friends, like Shaker is home, and I've always wanted to come back to my community. And it's because like I want to see change. And I think we are really seeing change in our community. It's these conversations that people have in the living rooms, and then they bring it to their homes, and these students are empowered, and they're taking it to district leadership, which has significantly shown that they support race relations by having a new DEI department in our school district, which is very rare for a school district to have a whole department working on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I think it was just like little moments in this SGORR allowed me to really understand what was going on, which empowered me, and hopefully I'm empowering my students to come back and make a change.
Yeah. Brooke, what about you?
Yeah, my aha moment unfortunately came when I was a little bit older than being in high school or younger. I was actually living in St. Louis in 2014 during the Michael Brown shooting and the Ferguson uprising. And my children were 7, 5, and 2. And, you know, we had to deal with that moment together as a family, and having the armored vehicles sitting at our Target when we were under curfew, or having friends of color feeling that tragedy on a more emotional level. There were a lot of questions that my children asked me that I actually didn't have the answer to. And so I learned with them. And so that was my aha moment. Unfortunately, it was just a few years ago. I was an adult, but every day is a learning moment. And here we are. Every day just trying to learn something new.
Yeah, I think what we all find that everybody can relate to what you just said. We're all learning something new every day, maybe something that we didn't even realize. And I think this is a good segue into my question for you, Brooke, because my question was, were you having, or are you having those conversations with your children and your own household? And you just mentioned that, you know, it just started recently, but before, was it something that you maybe just didn't think about? Was it something that you maybe shied away from, or just didn't really have experience with?
Yeah, I think as I identify as a white woman, so I think when I was raised, it was definitely the colorblind mentality, and racism will just die away with older generations. And I did have a diverse friend group, and we lived in diverse neighborhoods, so I didn't ever actually see segregation or racism up close until 2014, until the uprising. And conversations with my kids have just kept going ever since then, daily, and they have morphed. I think kind of like how Zach was saying, you just adapt to what the new question is and what you've learned, and you grow from there. So the topic in my house in 2014 is different now with the George Floyd killing. So yeah, we have conversations daily, regularly. But what I love so much about SGORR is, my kids get it from this old mom perspective, and I'm learning too. So it doesn't quite feel maybe fresh or relevant maybe to them. But when the SGORR students come in, it's such an exciting day in the classroom. And then it's in a casual environment. It's a different perspective. It's with their peers. And just having that sort of environment and that casual atmosphere and conversation, it's not so much, mom telling them or reading the news, seeing something awful. It's learning together in an age appropriate way, which is just so amazing. And it's not something that I had growing up, and it's just such a gift that we're giving to this next generation.
Yeah, and so it's obviously SGORR is helping advance the conversations for your child. And so when they come home, I think now my question almost has turned of what are you learning from them?
Yeah, that's actually more accurate. Yeah, I do. I think it can be sometimes easy to think that I've learned enough, and to think, okay, great, I understand racism now. And so having this ongoing conversation that the SGORR students can facilitate, it's not just they come in the classroom once, they come in fourth grade or sixth grade, and it's multiple times. And so it's a reminder that it's an ongoing conversation and that there's always something new to learn.
Okay, great. And, one thing that we like to talk about often in our newsroom and are really trying to pioneer is how to learn as well as educate the community on how to be an upstander and not a bystander when you might experience a hate crime, hate, racism firsthand. So I guess, Tiara, this might be a question for you. Anybody feel free to answer, but what's the importance of that? And does that or could that make a difference?
Yeah, I think that we saw with the George Floyd trial, the difference that upstanders made in getting a guilty verdict, because if it wasn't for the teenager recording it or people shouting to stop, or even people having the courage to be a witness during the trial, that's how he probably got like this guilty verdict, right? And so I think just being an upstander moves the needle and really pushes change. And it really shows that, as a person of color, it shows that I have an ally across the aisle. I know that there's someone who's in my corner. So I think that is what pushes change. I think we see it in the civil rights movement. The reason why we saw so much change is because we saw upstanders from different social boundaries really walking with these great giants, these civil rights leaders, or saying, no, I'm not going to move when I'm sitting on this bus, right? So we see these great giants who are upstanders, and that's how we get change. I think people are most dangerous when they're just silent and they're just sitting there. If you're just silent, you're continuing the system of racism. So we have to speak up, no matter if you're a person of color, but really especially our white allies have to speak up for us, because sometimes that's how these messages are going to get heard. And it's sad to say that our voices don't get heard, but sometimes it takes a white ally coming alongside us and really vocalizing what we're trying to see or our story, or just screaming out for help. So it's very important for upstanders to continue this change that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, Aaron, Zach, how are you maybe incorporating that kind of part of the conversation into the conversation with these students? Is that something that you guys touch on at all?
Well, I think that I really try to stress the importance of, if you can, like, help. Because I remember many times when I was like experiencing a microaggression or something, and I just was looking around desperately for help, and like no one else could say anything or wanted to say anything. So I just try to really stress to the kids, be like, if you see someone experiencing something that like is wrong, like people would sometimes say to me like, oh, someone's over there in the corner, and I'm like, oh, well, are you gonna like try to help? Like, what do you think you can do to like try and help this person in the situation, rather than just going over and being like, no, stop doing that, but like try to tell the kids like, what do you think you can do to try to help the situation, like with what you are seeing happening. So that's what I think.
Oh, and well, just to add on to that, like, I think within Shaker, one of the things that makes it different than other communities, specifically with SGORR, is that people want to join SGORR. Like, it's a very popular club, and that's why like people just want to be in it. However, within that, like, there's kind of a problem within itself in a couple ways, because the first way is that a lot of members will join and then think, I'm not racist, I'm in SGORR. How can I be racist? I'm in this club with racism. And then it's like, they're not really doing anything in addition, or they're staying silent when their friends are being offensive. And then there's the other thing within that, which is very prevalent in Shaker, because in Shaker, it's cool to be anti-racist, right? But then you have sneaky racism. You have the little things, and you have these things that people don't know how to confront, because it's hard to explain why that's an issue. It's hard to explain why these certain microaggressions and why doing certain things that seem like they are harmless actually are really harmful. And with that, that's when it becomes difficult to be an upstander for a lot of people, because you don't know how to explain why that's wrong. And so I think what SGORR is aiming to do right now, and is doing a better job of doing, is teaching how to be an upstander against the things that aren't seen by like massive amounts of people as being racism. Fighting against the little acts that people don't view as harmful, but really are.
Yeah, and I think that
No, go ahead.
And I think that we try to incorporate more like, what can you do? So we like introduce like what the issue is, where it came from, why it's happening. But then I think we've also been trying to like incorporate more ways or things that you can do on a personal or like even a more local level to try and help the issues that you see happening. Because it's so easy to be like, oh, look over there, something's wrong. But then if people don't know how to stop that, then I think it's kind of, I don't want to say useless, but it's kind of, difficult to bring or stop the issue.
Yeah, and for you guys who are dealing one-on-one, I mean, I think more often than not, what is the response or the reaction that you get from these students? Is it things that they're like, oh yeah, I recognize that, or is it kind of where you can see in their face or in their responses where they're maybe taken back because they didn't realize it, much like maybe like a lot of people out there in society?
Well, I think I normally, sorry, what did you say?
I know, I was just Aaron or Zach wanting to know.
Oh yeah. Well, I think I normally try and talk to the Black girls specifically, because oftentimes I'm one of the few Black girls who is like in my group. So I always feel the need to go and talk to them and be like, oh, are you okay? How are things with you? Because I know how tough it can be to be a Black woman in classes and in Shaker. So, and I think I've noticed that a lot of them know what's going on, but sometimes they just don't know what to do. And so I think that's why I've been like trying to be like more of a mentor and be like, okay, well, if you see this happening, maybe try this, maybe try and talk about this issue, or maybe just bring it up to them and say, oh, here's my issue. So you don't have to just sit in silence and let it just build up within you, like the resentment, and let that build up inside you.
Yeah. And the biggest issue I faced with one-on-ones when I'm talking to my white friends or even white just acquaintances, especially in like some of the sports I play, like, is just the endless, like, just being so defensive. You know what I mean? It's really hard to get through to someone when they're being defensive. And that's why the best way to approach this is is really through an educational standpoint rather than trying to be hostile. Even at least that's from my perspective, because I don't really experience racism, right? So I have to do it from an educational standpoint, because if I'm super aggressive, it's hard for people to necessarily either really understand what I'm saying because I don't experience it, or get past their own insecurity of being racist, right? And with that comes, like, again, just being defensive and not really being able to acknowledge your own flaws. So what I've found is just that if I can just be as educated as possible myself, I can then explain to others why what they're doing is wrong. Maybe even throw in, just anecdotes from other people I've heard, or, just any type of thing that will help further the conversation into having more self-awareness for them. That's the best way to approach it, at least from a one-on-one standpoint. That's what I found.
Quick question for me, for Tiara, and I also think for Zach and Aaron. Have other school districts reached out to you at all, Tiara, about this? SGORR's been around for almost 30 years. So obviously you're doing something right over there. Have other districts reached out and asked, like, what are you doing to make this work? How can we make this work in our schools? And I guess for Zach and Aaron, peers at other districts, whether friends, athletes, things like that, do you have these conversations about, hey, this is what we're doing here and maybe it could work for you?
Yeah, so at least once a month, myself or Dr. Wilder, who's the district's executive director, is talking to another school district about SGORR and how you can bring SGORR to their community. And so we're working with some alum who want to bring SGORR to their school district. But I think it's very important, I always say this in these conversations, is that SGORR is not the solution. Maybe it might not be the solution to your community's problems. And so the reason why SGORR was founded is because people were listening and people took their personal experiences to create change. So yes, we can bring SGORR to a school district in Iowa, per se, and it might not be the solution. I think the solution is really listening to the students and empowering the students to create an organized change and providing them with those resources so that they can have the impact and they can have the structure that SGORR does. So it's really, as the advisor, and as we help other school districts, it's like, how can we empower your students to create the solutions that they see themselves? Because that's simply what SGORR was. They saw the problem and then they created the solution. So really, I think that is more of the answer than just saying, okay, SGORR should come to your community.
Yeah, I definitely want to agree, because I play club volleyball and I play with a lot of people who go to like predominantly white schools, people that don't even know more than 3 Black people, like they can't even name more than 5 Black people in their school. So I think, and I've talked to them about SGORR. I've been like, for example, I'm going to be late to practice because I'm doing this. And I've told them about SGORR many, many times. And I've been like, oh, I'm in this club. But I think that it doesn't really matter if you just talk about it if people aren't passionate. So I feel like you have to have some type of like drive to want to make things better in your community. Because like Tiara said, you can bring SGORR there, but if people are just going to like laugh or like be like, okay, it is what it is, it's just a day off of school, then I don't think it's going to be that beneficial. But if there's passion, I think it can be amazing. Like, yeah, shaker.
Oh yeah, I would just have to agree completely. SGORR works at Shaker because there's a lot of people at Shaker that want to make SGORR work, and I couldn't imagine being in another community, and I just feel bad for other communities where there are students that want to make this happen, but it's just so hard because in a lot of communities, being someone that wants to be anti-racist is actually the minority, right? And here that's not necessarily the case. And so that's why SGORR, it's hard to really spread it, because you don't know who'd be open to the idea and truly open to it, and just continuing it.
Yeah, I think what Zach said, our community really wants SGORR to thrive. Like, it is rare to have I get paid to be the advisor. Like, I do nothing else in the school district, but I'm the SGORR advisor, right? I have meetings often with my boss, the executive director. So, and then we have community members or parents like Brooke and so many more who are like, how can we help, or can we partner with SGORR? And then most importantly, we have students who are engaged. Like, it's a commitment to be a SGORR leader, right? They have 3-hour meetings every Sunday, sometimes longer, every Sunday night. And then they also have to facilitate their own. So there's commitment, there's resources to really make this organization thrive. And that is why I think like those are the upstanding moments that we need to create change and sustainable change. Like, these different pockets of people are being upstanders to create change in our community, which hopefully translates in other communities if Zach goes somewhere for college and Aaron goes to college. So it does transcend farther from Shaker, but there are many upstanders who are making SGORR thrive throughout our community.
Marisa, what did I tell you? The half hour flies.
It flew by. I looked down, it said 7:59. I was like, wow. Wow. Oh, well, it was great to talk to you guys. I mean, this was a 30-minute conversation, but I don't think it's a conversation that ends here or anytime soon, if ever. So I think what you guys are doing and spearheading for, you know, this long now, I hope it just continues. And I can't wait to hear and continue to hear what you guys are doing and the change that's being implemented, all based on the conversations that you guys are starting. So, yeah. Dave, anything from you?
That's it. That's it. We thank our panelists for joining us again. Turning Point will be on Front Row Thursday night at 7. So make sure you catch this, and portion of this conversation will be part of that show. And if you missed any part of it, you can watch this full panel discussion at WKYC.com. For our wonderful panel, and for Marisa Saenz, our wonderful moderator, I'm Dave DeNatale. Thanks for watching A Turning Point. Stop the hate right here on WKYC.com. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're off.
Thank
It was so
you.
nice to meet you guys.
Wonderful meeting you guys.
Nice to meet you guys too.
Yes. Hey, stay in touch. I don't know if you have my email,
Please.
but yeah, please stay in touch. I can send it to you, Tiara, and then you guys can kind of scatter it about. I'd love to continue to see what you guys are doing.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. You guys have a good night.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
That was fun.